ES6, the REST operator provides a convenient way to work with arrays in JavaScript. It allows you to represent an indefinite number of arguments as an array. Hold on. Did he just say indefinite? That's right, indefinite. You don't need to know how many arguments are being passed to your method. You can just be confident in knowing that in the end, you'll have all the arguments in that single array. So when would this come in handy? Well, let's say for instance, we have a method that takes a bunch of numbers and adds them all up. We'll call this method sum. So like, give me the sum of all these numbers. In this case, we should get 15, right? Because 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 3 is 6, plus 4 is 10, plus 5 is 15. Back in classic JavaScript, we normally need to write something like this. We create our method and pass in the parameters based on the number of parameters we need. In this case, we're getting the sum of 5 numbers, so we need 5 parameters. And we'll just return the total of all of them. Param 1 plus param 2, param 3, and so on and so forth. And we can see that works. The problem is we won't always know how many parameters are going to be passed here. In this example, we're asking for the sum of 5 numbers. I have 5 parameters. But in the future, we may only need the sum of 2 numbers, or we may need the sum of 10 numbers. Who knows? Let's see what happens if we add a parameter. So instead of only needing the sum of 5 numbers, we now need the sum of 6 numbers. Check this out. Notice our sum is still 15. But we know that it should be 21 now that we've added 6, right? 15 plus 6 is 21. This is because there's nothing telling our method that we now want to include additional parameters. The only way to do that would be to actually add a 6th parameter, like this. And now we see we get the total we'd expect. But what happens if we remove a parameter from our method call? So instead of adding this number 6 here, we go back down to 5. Uh-oh. Now we get an error. That's because param 6 here is actually undefined. You can't add an undefined variable to a set of numbers. So let's do this using the ES6 REST operator. We'll keep our call to the sum method the same, but here we'll create a new sum method, and this time we'll use the REST operator as its only parameter. To do that, we'll add an ellipses followed by the name of our array. We'll call our array params here since it's an array of params. Now if we log params, we'll notice we get an array of each individual parameter. Pretty neat. Now let's create our sum logic. We could handle this in an old school for loop, but this is an ES6 course after all, so let's use another method that was introduced in ES6 called reduce. The reduce method will iterate over an array of items and in the end return just one single thing. This is perfect for us because we want to iterate over all of our parameters and in the end return just a single number, the grand total. The reduce method itself takes 2 parameters, a callback function and an initial value. Right off the bat, we know our initial value here will be 0 since that's how math works. And our callback method takes 2 parameters, an accumulator and a current value. Without going into too much detail, just know that for each iteration, the accumulator is equal to whatever was previously returned. So initially, since our initial value is 0, the accumulator is 0. Then in that first iteration, we add 0 and 1, which gives us 1. So for that second iteration, the accumulator becomes 1. Since 1 plus 2 is 3, in our third iteration, that accumulator becomes 3, and 3 plus 3 is 6. In our fourth iteration, that accumulator becomes 6. 6 plus 4 is 10. So in our fifth iteration, that accumulator becomes 10, and so on and so forth. This continues until we get to the very end of the array and return our final accumulator value, which for us would be our grand total of 15. If you're curious about the reduce method and want to learn more about it and how it can be used, we'll be diving deeper into it later on in the course. For now, this gets us what we need, so let's log it. Perfect. We see we're getting 15, which is what we'd expect. Now, if we were to add a parameter to this set, so we add 6 here, you see without updating anything else, it works out of the box, giving us 21. Let's say we remove some of these parameters. Does it still work then? And it does, right? REST to the rescue. You don't need to worry about adding these crazy parameters or knowing anything about the method being called in the code. All you need to worry about is taking care of the method logic inside of your function. Long story short, if you ever find yourself wanting to provide functionality but don't want to restrict yourself on the parameters being passed in, take advantage of the ES6 REST operator.